Started. Welcome everybody. My name is Ryan Poole. I'm co-host here with Jim Brown from New Path Title. People don't know me. I'm a real estate agent, been doing this for over 20 years. I'm also the founder of RealTrade, which is an online marketplace and social media platform for real estate. Really excited for our bi-weekly show because I work with a lot of real estate investors. I have, one particular client that I've sold over 100 doors to in the last couple years. And Larry Karp here is going to teach us here some great exit strategies that investors can have, so they don't have a big tax burden with a 1031 DST, exchange. So I'm really excited about this one, Larry, to have you on the host. Of course, always happy here to host with Jim here. He's the quintessential entrepreneur. Not only is a real estate attorney, he owns James Brown Law. He's the founder of New Path Title and the awesome closing software Title Leap. So this is an exciting show, Jim. This is very relevant, especially to me right now, too, as you know. So excited to dig into this one.
Yeah, this is a good show. And the thing that's most exciting to me is like I get to keep learning, right? So I get agents from the community that tell me about stuff, and then I get to meet really interesting people in the community providing those products and services. I can share it with you guys. And I will say that this show, when Larry told me what the product was, I was very surprised that I had not heard of this or, I wasn't aware. But the reality is, this is all good stuff. I'm never going to bring you guys content that I think is dead wood. My goal is to keep you guys on the edge of your seat. All right. Crossing for cystic fibrosis. We're going to hit the typical stuff coming up. Oh, Larry Karp, he's on our show today. I want to make his introduction. I'm going to go over a few things beforehand, but before a few little housekeeping. Crossing for CF is coming up. Never too early to give or donate your time. If you like our content, like and subscribe. Like Ryan said, we get a lot of people watching this stuff after the shows. And my goal is to bring you content that you won't hear anyplace else. And I've been blessed with the fact that this stuff kind of falls in my lap by virtue of the agents that call me with their questions. And I become a lightning rod for the community, and we can research some interesting stuff and I can share it with the community. I'm going to go over some tales from the street before we get into Larry's product and Larry's service, Larry's tool. I'm going to go over some tales from the street, which you guys, I can't stress to you enough how important this stuff is that you know. There are no dumb questions. So if you have any questions, throw it in the chat. We can go over it during the show. If you turn on your cameras, it always makes for more interesting presentations because I can gauge how fast I need to go based on your responses. And we're going to wind up with a question and answer and provide some time-saving tools and tips and all those kinds of things at the end. And we can have discussions for as long as it takes to weed this stuff out. Without further ado, where did that phrase even come from? Without further ado. So here is today's show. Share. Click here. All right, Ryan, can you see my outline?
Yep, crystal clear.
All right, let's see if we can blow it up a little bit. All right, today the show is about how you can make money on a 1031 to DST sale. Today is October 21st, 2025, and we are interviewing 1031 financial rep Larry Karp and unpacking how agents can lever his 1031 to DST tool to make commissions. I love my job. I never stop learning, and this is another tool I learned about less than a month ago. It's tough staying on top of the new laws, rules, and opportunities, but if we work together, we can all do it together. And like I always say, iron sharpens iron. It's cliche, but it really works. And two examples today from the street are going to be exactly that. Upcoming shows are going to include Josh Ulmer, who will explain Up Equities Buy Before You Sell program. That's going to change the game for young families and upsizing for anyone who's needing to buy before they sell. Today, I'm going to give you two tales from the street every agent needs to know, and then we'll jump into the 1031s. As always, my goal is to provide you guys content you won't find anyplace else, sharpen your edge, and help you make money. You can listen to anybody. I want you to find unique value and listen to us. The laws are always changing. You can text me 24/7. I'm happy to explain anything impromptu and do any research needed so we can figure out the answer to any of your real estate questions. I'm terrible at email. I apologize. If you want to get a hold of me, the easiest thing to do is to go to newpathtitle.com and click on 24/7 attorney support. If you like the way we work, in paragraph 20, you can write the closing agent is newpathtitle.com. That will save you time. I promise you, we are going to save you time and money on your deals. I'm not sure why the escrow agent is not a box on the form. Oh, and the closing agent is not, but there is a difference. So if you want us to close for you in paragraph 20, write the closing agent is New Path Title. All right, two tales from the street. First up, government shutdown kills new issues of flood insurance and closings. The government shutdown is in its 22nd day, I believe, and 1.8 million Florida homes have national flood insurance protection policies. It is estimated daily 1,300 closings in Florida are being impacted. If you're not realizing this, if you're not feeling it, you probably will. They're either stalled or they can't close. 28,000 homes nationwide have been impacted so far since the shutdown. There is no end in sight. Have the flood conversation with your buyers and sellers early. What does that look like? If you have sellers that buyers are going to need flood protection, you got to have that conversation early. If you have buyers that are going to need flood protection to make that purchase, have that conversation early. We have agents that we can line you up with that are great real estate agents that could get you the policies, but if they're not being issued by NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Protection Program, it's not going to happen.
So let me ask you this, Jim. So the NFIP policies, that's a federal agency that's issuing the policies for the flood insurance, and they're shut down. So now if you're in a flood zone, the home that you're selling is in a flood zone that needs that policy. What if you're not in a flood zone?
If the buyer has a lender, the lender is going to require flood insurance. Most, 99 times out of 100, you can't get that policy. The lender won't close. If you're not in a flood, in an area requiring an NFIP policy, if you're not in a flood zone, then you're not a problem. Or if you're a cash buyer, you're not a problem. Or a hard money buyer. Well, I don't want to go hard money right now. Let's just say a loan. Because there's going to be all different flavors of hard money requirements. But if you have a loan and you're in a flood area, then you're not going to get a policy, and it's going to be a problem at the closing table.
Wow. I mean, what percentage of contracts do you think are affected by this, Jim?
I'm just going to say probably half of our transactions are cash. Florida average is 70% of all transactions are loan transactions, right? So in our community, it's a little bit of an anomaly. In our shop, it's a little bit of an anomaly. We have a lot of cash transactions. We have a lot of high net worth sellers and buyers. So the amount of cash we see is higher than normal. And so statewide, I can only imagine there's 1 out of 10. I don't know. I'm sure in some communities you're going to go up to areas where there are higher loan percentage closings, and you're going to have low-lying areas where all the properties are captured in a flood zone. It could be half of your deals.
Goodness.
I mean, the way the Florida topography is, from the east coast of Florida to 95, it's a relatively steep incline. So our flood areas tend to be relatively small. But when you go on to western parts of the state, where you have the topography is much more gradually sloped, those flood areas are much, 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 much larger. And I would be, anecdotally, I would say that those are lesser priced homes that are going to be more encumbered by loans. So you could have a title agency that has problems with half their deals.
Wow. That's on top. We might as well add too, as a listing agent, don't forget you have to have the flood disclosure as part of your package to your buyers.
Good point.
Might as well add that in there now.
Yeah, it's a mandatory document. I forget about it all the time. But make sure you have this issue locked down. Make sure you have those conversations early. If you have a seller that's in a flood zone, it's going to be real. If they have to sell in a hurry, I don't know, maybe they're only looking at cash buyers. That's real.
I know there's that good website. I don't know, maybe we can put that link in the outline of the flood zones, for Southeast Florida.
I can add that.
Yep, I think that'd be a good ad in there.
We'll add the flood zone map.
Yep.
Flood zone. All right. Next, this is real, and I talked to a plaintiff's lawyer this morning. They are talking about ramping up litigation for Ring cameras, landlords that have Ring cameras on their properties. So front door Ring cameras that record audio can be problematic for landlords. Generally, landlords can shoot video outside the front door. However, recording audio may be a violation of Florida statute. A bigger problem is Florida plaintiffs' attorneys are incentivized to file these suits because the statute provides for attorneys' fees and damages in the law. So whenever you have a law, statute that provides for attorneys' fees to plaintiffs' counsel, the people filing the lawsuits, that's going to be something that lawyers, personal injury type lawyers pay careful attention to. Although, and the damages threshold is low. So all they have to do, I'll get into that in a minute. But if you can wrap your head around the fact that there's incentives in the law for these lawyers to file these suits, that's the problem. That's the threshold problem. And the damages threshold is low. They don't have to prove actual damages, just the fact that the audio was captured. So they don't have to go and prove that the recording hurt the person. They just have to prove that the recording was being conducted. And the fines are low. They're $100 a day up to $1,000, but their attorney's fees could be big. And they also allow for punitive damages. So here's the problem one. There's attorney's fees provided in the statute, and they allow for punitive damages. Now, I don't know what the punitive damages could look like, but we all know attorneys can drive up fees pretty quickly. So that's the one that the landlord's going to have a burden with, and they're breaking the law. And so what insurance company is going to stand behind you on that? Think of what the plaintiff's lawyers did with the photography laws, the photograph laws. The suits I've seen were $20,000 to $90,000 without proving actual damages. All you had to do was be an agent that used the pictures, and you were liable under the statute. Best practice: no audio on your Ring camera at your front door or anywhere on your property. Landlords may not like to hear this, but that's the best practice. The law requires all party consent prior to the recording. So while having a tenant agree in the lease may avoid tenant exposure, posting signs does not get you out of third-party exposure. Remember, all they have to prove is that you did the recording, not that you were damaged by the recording. It all hinges on a tenant and third parties' expectations of privacy. You can look at Florida Statute 810-145 on video voyeurism and Florida Statute 934.03, the Wiretap Act. Both of these topics can make great did you know content to circulate to your client base to stay top of mind. So if you're an agent and you're listening to the pod and you get off the pod and you make some quick content based on did you know you could have a problem if you have a landlord camera or a Ring, if you're a landlord and you have a Ring camera on your property, or you even make particularized calls to people that you know of or send texts or things like that. This is all stuff that will stay top of mind. So although it's confusing and it's tough to stay on top of all these rules, this is also an opportunity. There's an opportunity for the agent who wants to make it in this market and stay top of mind. I think this ring camera, landlord liability, and the government shutdown with regard to flood insurance, those are two great topics. And now you've got 1 week of really particularized content that you could send out to distinguish yourself. Ryan, are you reading any about the government shutdown in RealTrade or any of these other magazines, these periodicals? I haven't been seeing it.
No, I haven't been seeing it, Jim, and it's crazy that it's, I mean, you're literally boots on the ground here with, your title company, New Path Title. I mean, it's I didn't realize, it's impacting that many closings.
All right, enough of that stuff. Again, you guys take this stuff, cut and paste it, lever it, use it, send out emails, make contacts with your clients. This is how you're going to thrive and survive in this new real estate economic climate we have, this new landscape. All right, here's our main topic. I'd like to reintroduce Larry. And the topic is sell your client's rental property and get true passive income and make commissions, right? That's what it's all about. So here's the profile. If you have older clients getting marginal rents, tired of toilets, tenants, and trash, this could be a great way to sell the property, make a commission, and make your buyer relationship. Today's guest is Larry Karp. Larry, what's your exact title over at 1031 Financial?
I'm listed as a registered representative.
Registered rep?
Yeah, think of me also alternative investment advisor.
So
Yep.
the landscape is pretty simple. You've got a tool available to you called a 1031. I think generally everybody knows what a 1031 is, but just to recap quickly, a 1031 is a vehicle that a seller can use for non-personal real estate to sell the property and not pay capital gains and not pay the biggie depreciation recapture. Now, the problem with the 1031 could be that your client is tired of toilets, tenants, and trash. And so Larry's program, and I'm going to give you a quick example, is a way to use the 1031 exchange into a Delaware Statutory Trust. A Delaware Statutory Trust is a legal entity formed under Delaware law that allows multiple investors to co-own fractional interest in income-producing property, often commercial, through a trust structure rather than a partnership or corporation. Investors in the DST are beneficiaries, not parties. Key distinction, and they're not shareholders. Trustees, sometimes referred to as a sponsor, are responsible for the management of the property and are bound by the trust agreement. So if you think about a standard trust, I know nobody likes trusts, myself included. I mean, they're great planning vehicles, but whenever you're closing a property or whenever you have buyers or sellers that have trusts, they're always reluctant to disclose them. But if you think about a trust as just another type of entity, that's exactly what a DST is. It's a Delaware Statutory Trust. I don't know why, well, we want to say Dover, it's Delaware. And typically beneficiaries are different from members or shareholders because beneficiaries generally have no say in the management of the property and no voting rights. Exiting a DST, we're going to go over that in a little bit. Pros of a DST. So now we're talking specifically about what are the benefits of a DST, a Delaware Statutory Trust. There's no capital gains, tax, or depreciation recapture, and depreciation can be a biggie. Nobody thinks about depreciation recapture, but that can be huge. And if you used cost seg, like we've talked about in the past, this number can be huge. So if you depreciated your property through the OBBBA, as we've talked about in prior shows, and you go to resell, your depreciation recapture could be way bigger than your capital gains. And I'm going to show you an example shortly. I think that's pretty easy to understand. Another benefit of a DST, these are the pros of DSTs. You get a stepped up basis for your kids. So your kids, if you leave the asset in the if you leave the investment in the DST and you decease during your lifetime, your kids aren't going to pay capital gains to the extent that they would have in your lifetime. Huge, that can be huge. Diversified investments. So you just don't have one property. You've got typically multiple properties that are going to be diversifying your investment and securing you hopefully more soundly. True passive, there's no tenants, toilets, or trash. Easy to hit your 1031 time constraints. When Larry and I were talking, this is a really good tool. If you have a seller that doesn't want to pay capital gains and they've identified a property, and during due diligence, they're freaking out because we all know 1031s have these tight time constraints. You can plug into a DST. Larry, how quickly?
As an example, from the time we met a client to actually closing, the fastest one we did was 18 hours.
So if you have your closing, your acquisition identification isn't going well because you're limited in time in your 1031, and you're bumping up against your closing and you don't like the property in your 1031, you can sell your relinquished property and acquire a share in a DST, and Larry says in a day. So
Yep.
now you can plug these things in very quickly. And so you have a lot of clients that could be sitting on the fence wanting to sell, but they're not selling because they can't identify a property. Holy marketing content for you guys.
That's incredible.
So now you've got a vehicle, a legit vehicle that you can put them in. And I'm going to show you an example. And it's a very conservative example of how these things really can benefit your clients. And most importantly, for you guys, turn it into marketing content for you to stay top of mind. I hate to keep hounding on that element of our show, but when I talk to successful agents in this market, this is what they're doing. They're finding unique value propositions and they're going back to their client base over and over and over. It's also a good vehicle if your relinquished property exceeds the value of your acquired property. So if you have a property that you're selling for $600,000, you're $1 million, and your acquired property is going to be 600 grand, and you don't want to pay tax on the $400,000, ship it to Larry. Larry's going to put you into a DST that's going to get you passive returns, and you're going to park the principal money in your new acquired 1031, and you're going to take the difference and park it in your DST, and you're going to find.
So just to be clear on that, you can take the difference. So now you just open up a whole nother, buying opportunity for your investor that they don't have to go and match, or exceed the selling property. That's massive, guys. So like say you identified a 500,000, you have $1 million, you then could go to Larry and for the difference of the 500,000.
And here's go ahead.
Debt replacement. Just a comment here, right? So the typical DST, they're cash flowing, they're designed like triple net lease properties. Typically, they generate conservative cash flows to match, invest in real estate cash flows. They could be, in the 5s up to the 9s for, as a range. It depends on the asset class, depends how much debt's on the property. But going back to the debt replacement, the typical ones have at least 30%, even some up to 60% leverage LTV on the DST. And then you have a unique one that's a zero coupon, meaning it does not pay a monthly cash flow, but it's levered 85 to 86%, depends on the offering. And typically the tenants are very high grade tenants. Think US government, National Archives building, think Hershey's candy headquarters, think Amazon distribution centers and outside of Boston, FedEx distribution center on the tarmac at Detroit Wayne Airport, and one we have now with AmeriHealth in Philly, one of their headquarters. We're basically, the reason why I'm bringing this up, you can use the leverage on the DST to replace debt in a 1031 exchange. So for example, if you sell, just simple it down, you sell a property for
If you're selling levered, if you're selling property that has a mortgage on it,
Yep.
you can acquire a property in a DST with a similar leverage profile. So
Right.
talking to Larry is like talking to Einstein,
It's
and they
incredible.
communicate at a level that's way above my pay grade. But I can break it down into bite-sized pieces that you guys can use to lever your value proposition to your clients. And even if they don't do a 1031 DST exchange, even if they didn't do it, they still go, oh my gosh, we got that message from Australia the other day when they're talking to their friends. She's really bright. We're going to use her for our sale because she's constantly giving us these unique nuggets. And you're going to get some people that this message really resonates with. So the message that Larry's giving is if you have property with debt on it,
Yep.
he can get you into a DST with a similar debt profile. So if you have a property with 50-50 cash and 50-50 debt because the property went over, the value went up over time, he can get you into a DST that matches that profile.
And nothing comes out of pocket for the client to replace the debt.
It's brilliant. I told you guys when I was having this conversation with Larry, what was it, 6 weeks ago or so? I was
Right.
just like,
I mean, I literally just went through this whole issue with a client of mine. They sold a big industrial complex in Wisconsin, and we're trying to identify, multifamilies here in South Florida for his 1031 exchange. And like, dude, like nothing was working. Luckily we found one last minute. We did, but like
very stressful.
it was very stressful. I mean, it came down to like the last couple days, guys.
So and Larry has a program. I don't want to get too far into the weeds because it is complicated and like I said, it's above my pay grade. But if you have high net worth people like Ryan's talking about that have properties that they have to let go of to the bank because the values have shrunk and it's a strategic foreclosure, he can get you into DSTs that will be financially beneficial from a debt relief perspective to your clients. So just think of this. Just think of, I have a high net worth client with cash that has an obligation to the IRS for debt relief income. So if I owe the IRS $100 and the bank says, I'll take $70,000 in forgiveness of that debt, the IRS says, Jim, you just made 30 grand. You owe us tax on 30 grand.
Yep.
Larry can put your client into a program where they're not paying the IRS the tax on the 30 grand. They're paying a much lower tax that pays them, that keeps money in their pocket and pays them back over time. And if we have time, we can go into it at the end of the show.
Yep.
The cons of the DST, the majority of the DST properties have a mortgage, so you always have whenever you have a property, this typical property exposures when you have a lender, foreclosure, non-payment, things like that. The other con is that the investor has no control, the beneficiary, and values can drop just like anything else. But these are diversified across multiple properties and multiple tenants, so that we try to minimize that through the DST. I want to go quickly into this example I made. I'm going to give you guys the outline, and you can use this example to send it to your client. But let's just say your client has a property they purchased years ago for 650 grand. The sale price today is $1 million because they held on to it for 10 years. Now, we all know this is very conservative, but I try to come up with something that wasn't pie in the sky. So you could, and when you explain it to your clients, I would explain to them it's very, very conservative. So the appreciation is 350 grand. The depreciation recapture during the life of that property would have been $236,000. If you just sell the property, the IRS would want you to pay depreciation recapture tax on. The capital gain is $70,000, the capital gains tax, and the depreciation recapture tax would be $59,000. So the total tax due at sale would be 130 grand roughly. So they're selling their $650,000 property for $1 million. In that sale, they're going to owe $130,000 roughly of tax to the IRS. Typical returns. So if you rent that property, you're getting $4,000 a month for the most part, $48,000 a year. Your property tax bill is probably $10,000 a year. Your insurance is probably $10,000 a year. Commissions, because you're going to have to rent your rental commissions during the course of the year, are going to be 1 month's rent, probably $4,800. Empty changeover, 1 month a year is $4,800. Repairs, if you're doing well during the course of the year, $5,000 maybe. So your total costs for that 1 year are $34,000. And so your total income was $48,000. So you're looking at making $13,500, $13,400 for the year. Not bad, but your total return on value is about 1.34%. If you were to sell that $1 million property and send the proceeds to Larry, so at the end of the year, your total return was $13,400. If you send that $1 million in sale to Larry, you have closing costs of $35,000. I'm sorry. You send Larry $965,000 and he parks you into a DST return that has an 8% return value. That puts $77,000 of real money in your client's pocket with no toilets, trash, or tenants.
Can I make one clarification?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the money doesn't come to me. I don't handle money. It goes just the mechanics of it. You need a qualified intermediary. That's really, I'm sure most of you know that have done a 1031 exchange. They're the ones that facilitate the actual exchange. I'm the one that advises on which DSTs to go into. So basically they would wire it directly to the sponsor, the DST sponsors. So we don't touch the money.
I want to
Full
just
disclosure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, completely bona fide. Larry is would it be fair to call you a representative broker?
Yeah, I'm a broker that sells alternative investments,
Yeah.
which is what DSTs are considered.
So you have a client that has a $650,000 property. They're renting it out for $4 grand a month, and you can ratchet up the monies down or up a little bit. This is all stuff that I've done from 40 years of experience. And I think it's pretty accurate. But at the end of the year, you're putting roughly $13,500 in your pocket. And you're dealing with the toilets and the tenants and the trash. You send the money to Larry for your older tenant, and now you're going to put $77,000 in their pocket. No toilets, no tenants, no trash. And the thing that's really cool to me about this stuff is not only are you staying top of mind of your clients when you advertise this stuff, you're providing legitimate product, but you're also going to meet buyers because you're going to get leverage. You're going to have leverage to get your sellers. And right now we all know it's somewhat a buyer's market. You're going to meet buyers through the process. And I know agents that are listing properties right now just so they can go out and meet buyers. They don't even expect to sell the property. They're just meeting bona fide buyers to bring them to other properties. And with this kind of tool, you're gonna get sellers like Ryan was describing as Minnesota buyer to open their eyes on the opportunities of sale, and through that sale, you're gonna meet buyers. I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say all this stuff, but I just want to mention it. All right. Here is Larry's. uh, presentation utilizing DSTs. Let's see, I got to share this differently. I believe this is the one you want to go over, Larry.
It's just the one I sent last night. Yeah, we can, did you see the one I sent last night? That might be a little simpler, actually. I sent you a few slides.
Yeah, I have it right here.
It's a PDF. This is a PDF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
This, what you have here, you could distribute out
I'm
after
gonna
the
put links in the I'm gonna put links in the outline for this stuff.
right.
Okay, good. I was just going to say put that in the outline because I want
I
to
mean,
have
if
make
you
sure it's
want,
going in our
I
blog.
have the, if you want to, I could show my screen. I have it up. Oh, there it is. Yep. Yep. This is what I sent last night. Okay. Yep. Full disclosure. So if you like, I will, yeah, full disclosure. Again, Larry Karp. I'm with the company 1031 Financial. We operate under a broker dealer. Our broker dealer is called 1031 Securities. What a broker dealer is, think someone like a Morgan Stanley, UBS. We're obviously not as large as them, but we are governed under the SEC, right? So basically, I am, in the eyes of the SEC, I am a broker that sells private placements, or you could sell alternative investments. And DSTs are considered securitized real estate. That's why they're governed under the SEC. Next slide.
So as a owner of a share of a DST, you are a fractional owner of underlying real estate, collecting rents and doing all the things that your seller was doing before the DST.
Yep. Yep. If you go back one, you had it right. Just briefly, what is IRS Revenue Ruling 2004-86 basically states in a nutshell that fractional interest in investment real estate qualifies for a 1031 exchange, right? So people that have done 1031 exchanges or know of them, their basic understanding is sell property, buy property for the same, you sell for $1 million, you buy for $1 million or above,
Ryan's
and
dilemma.
then get the full tax deferral in between, right? But you still have to manage property, be the landlord, which kind of sometimes defeats the purpose of why you're doing a 1031 exchange. DSTs were created for investors that want to be passive, right?
And that's
There's,
why I'm thinking older
yeah,
owners. They've had the property for 10 years. They're burned out on this stuff. They're relocating. They're leaving the area. They're moving up to Tennessee. I just talked to half a dozen people in the last couple of weeks that are
I know.
property owners, have rentals, and go to North Carolina or Tennessee. Probably half a dozen people in that fit that category. And what a great opportunity for an agent to throw this in front of those people. You're moving to Tennessee, don't get out of your rental, don't get out of your income stream, but don't have that property that you're living in
And you
Tennessee.
get listings. You get listings for properties to sell. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the win.
right. In a nutshell, this, I'll just, yeah. So this slide, think of me, the bottom right? This is the progression within the 1031 exchange. If you see actually the qualified intermediary at the middle, companies like IPX, First American, Old Republic. I work with all of them. So if you need one at a minimum, whether you think about DSTs or not, please come to me. I'll make a good recommendation. But where I would come in for the DST portion is the bottom right. And it doesn't mean when you do a 1031 exchange and you find replacement property, you need to find ID replacement property. Doesn't mean you have to do one or the other. You could do a combination of both. And one thing to think about is DSTs are real estate. They're just a different form. They're fractional interest in real estate. So if you're selling for $1 million, you need to replace $1 million or greater. You have your eyes, or your client has his or her eyes on a $850,000 property, all cash. You have $150,000 left over. You don't know how to place it. DSTs are a perfect option. Next slide. Okay. Just some of the kick and the highlights that Jim has already, we referenced, right? No management responsibilities, very attractive to the older set. This space typically, not always, but typically skews towards the older demographic. Older folks that, they've made a fortune in invest in real estate, and now they're at an age they just either don't want to or can't manage property and they want to be passive, right? Access institutional sized properties. This allows the smaller investor, and smaller investor could be a $10 million investor, for example, that invests alongside big institutional grade real estate, right? All the sponsors that I deal with are
And we apologize for that.
institutions.
And then let Matthew know.
Oh, okay.
Got it, yeah.
Limited liability. Your positioning here is non-recourse. You're essentially a limited partner where the sponsor is the GP. That's the simplest way to think about it. Estate planning. The net here is, why do people do a 1031 exchange? They want to protect their step up so that their children, when they pass on, receives the property at that current fair market value, and that fair market value becomes their new cost basis, right? So as you can imagine, in the US, especially down here in Florida, people that invest in real estate for a long time have very low basis, if any, and their valuations have gone up. So if they were to sell outside of a 1031 exchange, they get destroyed in taxes. So this is an estate planning vehicle. Insurance policy. This is what I mentioned the example before. Think of me as the option to make sure that your client does not have a failed 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
I hear a ton of agents talk people out of 1031 exchanges because of the time constraints.
Right. Again, it doesn't mean you have to do one or the other, right? That example where you have 150,000 left over, if you don't place it and the client ends up having to pay tax on that, chances are they're not going to be blaming themselves.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to think about.
So
I'm an insurance policy. Yes.
Let me ask you this question. Is there a part of the DST 1031 exchange where they've identified properties that are in an opportunity zone? How does that apply? I mean, this is where we can get real creative, as far as rolling it into, is that possible?
Yeah, they are. Of course, my firm's focus are DSTs, but if the client wants opportunity zones, we have access to them. We don't love them. We don't love the long lockup. That's a whole separate topic, but yes, they're considered investment real estate. So yes, you can identify those also. Right. And, with a 200% rule, I don't know if you're aware, for a 1031 exchange, says that for the amount that you sell, you can identify as many properties as you like, up to double the amount that you sell. So you're selling for $1 million, you can identify as many properties up to 2 million. So you can do what is it, $100,000, identify $100,000 properties,
I
including
didn't know about that rule.
opportunity zone. Yeah, there's the 3 ID rule that most people know,
That's
and then
the one
the
I'm familiar with.
200% rule.
But I guess my question is, there a DST where they're buying a share that the DST
Two separate.
has opportunity zones in its portfolio of ownership?
No, not in the DST. It's structured
It's gonna be-
specifically as
Yeah,
as
it's going to be two separate
Okay. got it.
taxing vehicles. They're
Yep.
they're both somewhat accomplishing the same goal, but the DST is more liquid, more immediate, more payment, more now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just the last thing on this slide. So the insurance policy, when we present DST options, we diversify so that we split up. Say there's $1 million chunk that needs to be identified. We'll split it, say, for example, five DSTs at 200K each. One's a multifamily, one's a self-storage, one's a student housing, and they have different. So we're diversifying by asset class, we're diversifying by hold period. The hold periods could range, one's a longer term, 10-year, one's a 7-year, one's a 5-year, one's a 3-year. So we would think of it like we're putting together a portfolio of CDs with staggered maturity dates, so that they get a liquidity event every couple of years. Okay.
Liquidity event is when the investment pays off.
At a
And
multiple. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And last swap till you drop. You guys know what a 1031 exchange
Until you
is.
drop. Yeah.
Defer. When they pass on, their heirs, their children receive the step up. Next slide.
Everybody know what a step-up basis is? So that example where they bought for $650,000, if the investor passes away, the kids don't get a $650,000 property. The basis that the kids get is $1 million.
Yep. And this goes back, it's a crude example, but this goes back to the example that Jim was talking earlier about replacing debt, right? So for example, if you look at,
You
you're
guys,
essentially,
this is gonna get complicated. I want to give you the trigger thought. High net worth person, high net worth seller, high net worth property owner. They have an IRS obligation. You call Larry and you say, "Hey, Larry, put me in something so we can make this sale happen and make my seller happy that they're not paying the IRS so much money."
a lot of people, when they go into a 1031 exchange, especially the ones that haven't done one before, they think, oh, I'm selling my $1 million property. I'm retiring a $300,000 mortgage at closing. I now have 700 equity. That's all I need to replace. No, the IRS states total real estate, equity and debt, right?
Yeah.
So you sell for $1 million, even though you have 700K left over, you still have to replace $1 million. That's why, so that $300,000 mortgage, you could take a portion of the 700,000 in equity, a portion of it, we put it into DSTs that are carrying at least 30% leverage, if not probably higher.
Yeah.
So for the, smallest, so the smallest amount of equity buys more debt, and you satisfy the total real estate for the IRS. Try to simple it down. Next slide.
Yeah, that was a good explanation, and I was taking it to the next level, which is the debt obligation. But yeah, when
Right.
you're selling property with a mortgage, Larry, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I didn't research this before we got on. So you're selling a property with a mortgage. It's $1 million property. There's a $300,000 mortgage. So there's $700,000 in equity about to be broken free. If you buy another property at 1031, you have 700 grand in your pocket to buy your 1031. Typically, the clients I see go out and they buy a $700,000 property.
Yep.
What is the tax burden of the $300,000?
It's subject to capital gains tax because it's considered boot, right? So whatever the tax rate is in the state of Florida, let's say very conservatively federal, long-term federal 20%, Obamacare 3.8%. That's
No,
the
no. I never. Okay, so right. So you have a
capital
$1 million
gains.
property.
Yeah.
You have $1 million property subject to a $300,000 mortgage.
Yep.
What I see clients doing is they go out and they buy a $700,000 property, and that eats up the cash. But now you're saying, and what I'm learning now through the conversation, I hate to sound naive, that they would owe capital gains on the 300. So there'd be
On the
in
debt.
theory
Yeah.
$60,000 debt obligation on the 300.
Right. Because it's total debt it's total, not debt, it's total real estate replacement.
Total real estate
Debt and
replacement.
equity,
So
equity
from
and debt.
the IRS's perspective, you only replaced $1 million sale with 700, you owe 3. But
Right.
if you buy a DST, you would
With
replace $1
leverage, with
million with
leverage.
$1 million. What's
Yeah.
that?
With
With leverage.
DST, with leverage on it.
Well,
Yep.
if you bought a DST that had debt on it, you would still take your $1 million sale, buy the $1 million purchase in the DST and have no tax burden.
Correct. Correct. That's a big reason why, another reason why people love DSTs, because they can help them replace debt. I see a
Wow.
question, I think, what are the minimums for investment? Typically start for DSTs at 100K. Everything's negotiable, but assume 100K. Right? I think that was the question.
Yep.
Right? Okay, next, here,
Well, she asked too, the second question, if you don't have heirs, what's the end tax burden then?
what's the what?
End
The end?
tax burden.
You keep the end tax burden, it's only
tax.
realized when they sell outside of a 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
Right. They keep deferring when they pass away, then whoever is named as and Jim, this is to you, however the trust set up, whoever would inherit, right? Whoever inherit the property, they would receive it at the step up. S Corp's a little different, not going to get into that, but let's just talk about individuals or individual trusts. Yeah, again, it's the heir that receives the property at that new basis, right?
Did that answer the question? So the answer is going back to the $1 million example that you bought for 650 grand, you bought it for 650. If the owner alive sells it for $1 million, they'd owe capital gains on the difference. They bought it for 650, they sold it for $1 million, they owe capital gains on 350 grand. If they bought it for 650 and it's worth $1 million at the time of their death, it transfers to the kids. The kids get it for $1 million. If mom dies on Monday and they sell it on Tuesday for $1 million, there's no capital gains event. Same thing happens within the DST, that all transfers with a stepped up basis.
Correct.
So
Correct.
yeah.
I'll take 10 seconds on this one. There are just two numbers you need to focus in on in the middle at the bottom. 86% loan to value, 14%, leave 14% equity in the deal. This is an example. It's not a typical DST, but this is the zero coupon, very high leverage DST that's used for liquidity. People that want to pull out liquidity from their investment in a 1031 exchange within a DST.
This
Right.
is the one that I was talking about, where if you think about client owes the IRS a whole bunch of money, they have cash, they're just trying to save cash. We're not talking about somebody that's out of money. Call Larry, he'll explain how you can use the high leverage DST to avoid paying the IRS a ton of money.
Yep. And end up with something left over that you can reinvest however you like.
And end up with an investment. Yeah.
You go next.
Bonus
I'm sure you've been on the big beautiful bill.
Yep.
Yeah, we did a whole show on this, a couple
So
shows.
go to the next slide then. All right. So we have I have access to 100 different DSTs and a couple non-DST funds. We definitely focus on DST. This is an LLC, but this one focuses on bonus depreciation. And basically in the big beautiful bill, now that it's 100% bonus permanently, until the next administration does something with it, whatever. This fund is they're an owner operator of gas stations. Gas stations qualifies for bonus depreciation. That's because north of 50% of sales are generated from petroleum gasoline sales, so it qualifies.
Yeah.
And the long and short of it is, you can use, after an investment, say you put $100,000 into this investment, it starts at a 5% coupon, it goes up to 8% over like a 5-year term. And on the exit, you'll get a multiple. They're targeting 2x in a multiple. That's not really why you're going in. You're going in because the leverage in this fund provides a 2x multiple to generate a tax loss. So if you look, it's actually a little over 2%, but let's just say 2x. You put 100,000, or in this case, you put 400.
Yeah, let's give us a simple explanation, simple example.
Here we go.
Yeah. So in other words, you put $100,000 in, you're getting at least a $200,000 tax loss to use against passive income. So passive income is sale of a property that you're going to have to pay, you didn't do a 1031 exchange and you're going to have a tax bill, or distributions, monthly distributions, quarterly distributions that you would pay ordinary income tax. That's why you want into this, because it generates a tax loss you can use against both of those. Okay.
No.
I mean, well, no, it's basically, this was created, Jim, to take advantage of the big beautiful bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I send $100,000 into your fund.
Yep.
And I get $200,000 in write-offs.
Correct. Plus you get, you're invested in the fund, whatever the returns of the fund are. Like, I mentioned, start at 5, go to 8, etc. Yep.
We got to talk more.
Yep. We use this example, or we introduce this to people that either A, they didn't do a 1031 exchange, they didn't think about it. B, they have a failed exchange because remember 45
Yeah.
calendar days to identify, and it just didn't work.
180
They missed the
close.
deadline, whatever. Now they're stuck. This is another option to help a client that is going to pay taxes. All right, so next slide. Just have like one or two more, maybe three. Yeah, I mentioned that. Deed in lieu of foreclosure. Jim, maybe you just want to tee it up again, what you mentioned earlier, and I'll just get into the example.
If you have a client that owes money because they have debt relief, instead of paying the tax to the IRS, Larry can put them into an investment vehicle, which will return them cash today and create an investment into the future. So if you have a client that owes the IRS, instead of saying $10 million, let's just say $1 million, and on a debt relief, $1 million of debt relief, they would be cutting the IRS a check for 320 grand. Under Larry's program, he could put you into a vehicle that you would pay 140 grand to, that would get you out of the 320 grand obligation. So
Yes.
you pay 140 instead of 320, and he'll return you. So you'll spend less with the IRS, and he'll put you into a vehicle that makes you money over time.
To simple it down, option A is go through the regular course of handing the keys back to the bank on a mortgage you're underwater on. You negotiate debt forgiveness. The IRS still requires capital gains tax on the debt forgiveness. I know these are big numbers, but say a $10 million number, you probably write a check for 3.2. That's the typical
3.2 million,
3.2 million.
$10 million in debt relief. So if you boil it down, if it was a million,
yeah.
and if it was $1 million in debt relief, which is not unheard of,
right,
then it would be a check for 320 grand to the IRS.
Correct. So gone, you can't do anything with it. Or option B, just look at the two numbers in the middle. We're basically saying you can invest, instead of, you were going to write a check for about 320K, take 140,000, right? Invest it in the high leverage, the high leverage DST, and you buying about 86% in debt, about 860,000 in debt. So you're getting rid of that tax liability. Okay. And you're making an investment because you're going to get a return on it. It is a long-term hold. It's a specialized product, but you will get a return on it. So who would you rather be? Someone to write a check to the IRS for 320K, or make an investment for 140K and remove your tax liability of the IRS on the deed in lieu of foreclosure? So makes sense. Okay. So this is the final summary. Basically 45-day ID deadline. I always have inventory, about 60 different sponsors across 100 to 125 different flavors of DSTs. I mentioned them, like student housing, multifamily, self-storage, etc. Debt replacement, right? And also, no management, right? That's the beauty of DSTs. They're managed by big institutional companies. Some of them you may or may not know. I'll throw names out there like Cantor Fitzgerald, we work with, Pasco, Inland Securities, Peachtree Capital Group. We tend to skew towards the ones, doesn't mean we don't like all of them, but the ones that only focus on a single asset class. Like Peachtree Capital Group, all they do are hotels. Right. So because they understand the nuances of that asset class. Leftover boot, that's basically the excess. The example I gave, you're selling for $1 million. You found a client found an $800,000 property. They have 150 left over. How are you going to replace it? We can match it down to the penny, any crooked number. Debt replacement, we got into ad nauseum. Deed in lieu of foreclosure, just got into cash out refi. People need liquidity. We have that high leverage DST can help with liquidity. People pull cash out. And diversification, right? Go back to the example, CDs with staggered maturity dates, And I mentioned the bonus depreciation example. And I think the last slide is just on me, and that's it.
I want to understand this utilizing bonus
Yeah.
depreciation to offset taxes from a failed 1031.
Yep. That's the example of put 100 in and get a $200,000, at least a $200,000 tax loss to use against passive income.
Wow.
Yep.
Larry Karp launched 1031 Financial, Florida practice. He's got, Larry, you have a show coming up, a live show coming up Thursday. I'm going to attend out in Wellington at the Polo Club,
Yep.
National Polo Center, NPC, right? National Polo Center.
Yes, where they have the actual events. We have a nice room there. We, locally, do a lot of seminars, focusing right now on Florida. Did a few weeks ago, Tampa, Jupiter, Boca, Las Olas. This one is Wellington, have more coming up. And basically what we do is we never sell anything. We just educate with examples like I just showed. And the typical, it's a great networking event for anyone.
Yeah, I was
that's
going to say, it
interested.
sounds like a good spot for real estate agents to possibly be and meet investors.
Absolutely. It's great networking. You'll have it's typically high net worth investors and CPAs and attorneys. So, but that's me.
Yeah, so unless you want to meet those kinds of people, don't go.
Right, right.
Unless you don't want to meet them, stay home. If you want to meet them, anyways, I'm going to be there. Larry and I have no financial ties. He was introduced to me from one of the attendees on the pod, Alex Yasa, and Alex has sent us a lot of beautiful work, and he made the introduction to Larry. And I have to be honest, when he first introduced me to the concept, I said, I don't need to know about another financial vehicle and blah, blah, blah. And then he said, no, you got to listen to this guy. And as soon as he started talking, I was like, holy cow. This isn't an answer to every objection a 1031 client has ever said to me over the last 20 years of practice, 40 years of selling real estate, 20 years of private practice, over 20. And so for that reason, I thought it was a good opportunity to introduce this stuff to you guys. Again, you don't have to remember everything. You just have to remember the issues. You don't have to remember all the rules. You just got to remember the little triggers that make you think of these things. Larry's available, I'm available, and we can fill in all those details. So it's not a matter of memorizing the rules. It's just knowing what the options are.
And to call me, get a hold of me. And just one quick parting thought, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I would say, I've done a lot of seminars over the last few years, and I find it very interesting. The rooms filled up with the type of high net worth and advisors that I mentioned. And I would say out of 10 people in the room, I'd say 3, maybe 4 out of 10 fully knows how to fully utilize the 1031 exchange. Less than that knows what a DST is. So the reason why I bring it up, it's a differentiator for you versus your competition. So
that's what I'm stressing to you guys. This is a real opportunity. Stuff like this is a real opportunity. And this is a relatively easy visual for your client to wrap their head around. And I tried to give you guys.
Well, I mean, what a great way as an agent to get listings. I mean, to identify, this would probably be an investor you've been working with. That's a older investor that's looking, at some point here to exit, doesn't want to pay the big tax burden. This is something that you could, number one, look like a hero coming in with this information, and obviously as well, get the listings for their assets for sale.
I'm gonna give this to you guys in the outline. Feel free to share it.
Please have that link too in the outline, Jim, with Lawrence's, PDF, if you can put, some kind of Google document or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in the outline. Let's see, main topic, Larry. So we got Larry's material. Here's my outline. I'm gonna give you guys that. We'll put Larry's material in there. You guys will have quick access. And again, my goal is that you guys lever this stuff and use it over and over and over. Don't, it's not pirating. Just take it and use it to your advantage. Think of us when you're doing a closing, but take this stuff and lever it to your clients through your emails, through your campaigns. I'm getting more and more texts every day, personalized, specialized texts. I don't know if it's AI or if it's real people anymore, but that's the stuff that we need to do as marketers of our product, lean into all those tools. All right, you guys, that is all I have for today. It's 11:05. It's been a pleasure, and I want to reinforce, I get so much knowledge out of you guys texting me with your questions, and the whole issue of the government shutdown affecting loans and the Florida statute on Ring cameras, that was all brought to me by the attention of agents. So having you guys contact me with your problems and your issues, and when things go well, that's all stuff that I feed on to help everybody in the profession. And this thing about the Ring cameras, if I was an agent, I would lever that today. I'd send out a mass email. If you guys are a landlord, if you're a landlord and you have a Ring camera, just be aware of the Florida law and stay top of mind to your clients. That's all I've got, Ryan. Oh yeah, we got a tag team Ryan here. We got RealTrade.
Thanks, Jim. No, it's amazing, Larry. Thank you very much for doing this. I mean, this is very relevant to me right now with my real estate investors, as I've had, quite a great run with real estate investors in the past 10 to 20 years that I'm going to be telling them this information and sharing your info, Larry. So awesome, Jim. Always great to co-host this bi-week webinar. This is truly information you're not getting anywhere else. Too, for people that don't.
Right? Are you hearing about this anyplace else, Ryan?
No, I'm not, Jim. Jim, this is completely new to me, and it's something that just has really opened my eyes and got my wheels turning here with my real estate investors that I have, especially that are high net worth. Really quick thing on RealTrade, guys. Check it out if you're a real estate agent, realtrade.io, or just Google RealTrade. Create a free profile, and imagine this, get free leads off your listing, guys.
How many users are you up to?
Over 3,300 agents now, Jim. So excited about that. Over 700 different brokerages. You can get connected with awesome service providers like Jim. Larry, I'd love you to be on RealTrade. It's, to create a profile there so agents can network and connect with you there. So an online marketplace plus a social media platform for real estate. So we have a lot of agents and other service providers on there. Definitely can't say enough good things too about Jim and New Path Title, his awesome closing software, Title Leap. And something that I use literally on every single deal now, and it's free, is Title Advance. Can't say enough good thing about Title Advance. Know going into every single deal now what the equity is. If there's any kind of crazy liens, don't waste your time, guys, on listings that can close. You know what I mean?
And it wins you listings. So you walk into an appointment, and the sellers are now interviewing a couple of people. You walk in with your Title Advance, and you have the equity conversation, and you distinguish yourself as a more knowledgeable agent. You're going to, when they're laying in bed that night and they're going over, honey, who did we talk to today? Oh, well, Australia showed up with that Title Advance. And
yep. I've literally last two listings I had, I took Title Advance to the listing appointments, and it helped me win them because, like I said, no one else even knew. I mean, there was one that he had a crazy fine that he didn't even know of that was sitting there, for the last, I don't know how many years. We got it rectified pretty quickly, but those are the types of things. You seem like a knowledgeable agent, and that's the ones that obviously sellers want to go with.
And it's going to save you time. I had an agent call me the other day, and they said they used the Title Advance. They got on the seller's radar because the seller didn't realize they had three mortgages they had to pay off. They thought they only had two. And so when they did the equity equation with the three mortgages, there was no equity and no sale. And so now they're doing a little bit of work with the bank to see if they can take care of that third mortgage somehow, and then they're going to make the sale happen. But that saved the agent a ton of time.
Awesome.
All right, you guys.
Thank you very much, Larry. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tremendous pleasure, you guys. It's an honor to serve. Have a great week. Go out, sell lots of homes. Call me frequently. We'll talk.
All right, let's do it. Good luck out there, guys. All right, bye.